are again. Good evening, everybody. Hey, it's Matt here, Metal Matt. I'm reaching you today from my bedroom. Behind me are some of my books, small amount. I own a lot of books. That means I'm smart. I do own a lot of books, but does that mean I'm smart? Not really. You'll be the judge of that, dear viewer. Thanks for joining me here on my channel. As always, if you're new, welcome, absolutely. And if you're returning, well, welcome as well. Jeez. All are welcome here, I always say that. The things that are not welcome here are hate. No bigotry, no sexism, no racism, no ableism, no transphobia, no misandry. Get my thoughts together here. It's actually going to be, I always say in the videos, right, it's like a running joke on my channel, it's going to be a short one. This one, though, on purpose, I will keep it short because of the nature of what it's about. So, it's one of those things, a confluence, right? Oh, that word confluence. Just several things all kind of came together for me, like very recently. I'm talking like maybe in the last hour, 90 minutes, if that. Very, very recently came together. It's the idea of genius, in particular male genius, and the way that culture excuses genius males' poor behavior in service of their genius. So there are a lot of theories around this, and I won't get into too much technical stuff. I just kind of wanted to come off the top with this, my thoughts. So two things led to this. One was there was a very recent written piece, and I'm forgetting where. You guys can Google it and find it. It's available online. I don't think you need to get through the paywall. I think it's actually available to the public. At least a big chunk of it is to read without a subscription. But if you can subscribe, always, support your favorite publications and great writing, which this was. It's a piece about the late writer David Foster Wallace. And it was from the point of view of several women, and one in particular, a woman named Mary Karr. I'm trying to figure out right now what to call this video. I may put her name in it, because this video has to do with some things I want her to hear. Not that she gives, she couldn't care less who I am, but it's something of is an apology, and I want to explain it through this thing about male genius and bad behavior, and how the two don't necessarily need to be linked, but sometimes they are. And the unfortunate thing about that is the cult of personality that admires them lets them get away with really crappy behavior for a long, long time. And sometimes, like in the case of Wallace, after his death, we still let him get away with certain things. So it's firstly David Foster Wallace. The other man, it's two very iconic men. The other is chess champion Bobby Fischer. So over on Dr. Grande's channel, the psychotherapist, counselor guy, his videos are really interesting if you want to learn about like the DSM, the District Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM. We're in 5 right now that psychology medical professionals use for diagnosis and care and sometimes medication and things like that. You'll get kind of a secondhand education in the DSM if you watch Dr. Grande's videos. I say that because I own the DSM and I read it for fun, because I'm that big of a actual nerd. I'm not like a nerd like I love Star Wars and, geeky stuff that's super popular, and I pretend like that makes me an outsider, and hell no. Star Wars is whatever. I actually read stuff that no one gives a crap about unless they're, in the field or they teach or something. I've always been drawn to really dense texts. But in fact, behind me you might be able to see there's a couple of gigantic books. Maybe another time I'll talk about those, but those are a couple of my bucket list books that are just, doorstop, giant cinder block books. I'm drawn to that. I like reading as an accomplishment as well as a way to learn and engage intellectually and build my own resources as a writer. So Dr. Grande's video about Bobby Fischer, which I think was yesterday. It's a pretty new video. I think Bobby Fischer was a really interesting person. I had read about him very recently too. So I read Dick Cavett's book Talk Show, which is a collection of Dick Cavett's blog posts from it's either the New Yorker or the New York. No, it would be the newspaper. I think it was the New York Times, because it was every week, every other week he wrote these, and it's a collection of them over like a 2 or 3 year period. His favorites or something picked in it. It's a book. It's a collection of them. Very good book. I highly recommend it. Pick it up. Make sure Mr. Cavett gets what he. And also Dick Cavett's a huge inspiration to me. I have another project coming for all of you who dig what I do, and hopefully the growing audience I have. It's a talk show that I have. I have most of the gear for it, the equipment to do it. I have people in mind to start it. The nature of what it is, it can grow forever pretty much. I found an inexhaustible resource to make a talk show out of, which I'm really stoked about. I've shot some test episodes with a couple of friends, which I still have, and if they're okay with it, I'll release them, online for people to watch, because I think they're darn good. Because of them, not me. I mean, I'm doing my best, but have some damn fine interview subjects. So anyway, reading the Dick Cavett book, he became friends with Bobby Fischer over a period of a few years, and this was back when Bobby Fischer was like, it's hard for people now, including myself, to know, like people, I'd say under the age of like 55 or 60, it's hard for us to know how major Bobby Fischer was. He was not just the world's greatest chess champion, and one of the best in the world, and competed with others in televised chess. That's how he came to prominence. He was not just like a public intellect, he was this chess genius. He was like Michael Jordan or Kurt Warner or Brett Favre, or, you know what I mean, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, Mia Hamm, soccer, goddess. He was like that level of chess player. He was like just next level, God tier, right? He was God tier. He was amazing. And people would he was really interesting to watch when he was playing, like his facial expressions and his mannerisms and his body language. He was gripping. He was very watchable. You just wanted to watch him play. It was incredibly entertaining, and I forget how many millions are estimated to have watched when he played his 1972 World Championship chess match on television over the series of, I'm going to botch all this, I think it was over 4 or 5 nights in prime time slots on television. People like sat there on their couches with buckets of popcorn and a can of beer and watching Bobby Fischer play chess against the Russian. I just had his name too. I'm so sorry. These facts are not really the point entirely, right? But so Bobby Fischer, and then, like I said, David Foster Wallace. So both men suffered from, in Wallace's case, diagnosed, and a lot of his fiction and essays deal with this, a diagnosed mental illness. Bobby Fischer he was sent to doctors many times and evaluated. I don't know if he ever carried an actual diagnosis, but part of what Dr. Grande's video was about was theorizing what kind of a diagnosis he may have been given, or possibly differential diagnosis, or co-occurring, dual diagnosis type of thing. I myself carry a dual diagnosis. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about these other people and people around them. And Mary Karr is a big part of that. So let's bring this all together as quickly as I can, and as grippingly as I can for you guys to be entertained, have your brains tickled. So Bobby Fischer died at age, I believe he was 62 to 64, somewhere in there. Too young by today's standards. But one of the things I remember about him later in his life was that chess became overshadowed by the fact that he was anti-Semitic, and he would say like racist things and really strange things, and he was very anti-American. He had his reasons for that. We won't get into that in the politics and stuff, but he said some stuff that was just flat out bigoted, stuff that's like not excusable. Like, well, back then it was different. No, it's just a few years ago. It's not okay. What he was saying is not okay. But he did that, and then he died of apparently kidney failure. I thought he had for some reason I thought he had like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, and it had whittled him down over time until he passed away, but I was wrong about that. And David Foster Wallace's case, he took his own life. He committed suicide at the age of, I want to get this right, 47 or 48, I think, late 40s. Not far from here in a city called Claremont, California. He was a teacher at the Claremont colleges. They're this tetralogy quartet of, or is it five? Maybe it was five, not four, five private colleges, private universities he taught at. In addition to being, what they call a lion of literary fiction, books like Infinite Jest and brief interviews with hideous men, things like that are just legendary, pieces of writing now, and Fischer's championships. And so they have these people around them. I shouldn't say it that way. That's the point of this. Not around them. People living their own lives that happen to come into contact with David and Bobby, and they get involved with them. And in the case of Mary Karr, she's a writer. She's still around. She's a damn good writer, primarily known for memoir. She's also an essayist and a poet. But they had some sort of an affair. Again, the details, I wish I had more just coming to mind immediately, but while Wallace was alive, and then right around the time of his death, it was talked about how she was sort of a side note to his story, almost like a footnote. Which, if you know Infinite Jest, you know that's, I'm not trying to be cheeky, but that's kind of like a funny, ironic thing, footnote, because that book is full of all the famous footnotes with all the weird stuff in the back of the book. So it's kind of like she was sort of a side aspect of his story, like a bit player, a co-star. But of course, she has her own story. You can read it. You can buy it right now online on IndieBound or Amazon or Powell's or whatever you use. You can buy her books right now and read about this woman's life, and that she's still living. But I had gotten very angry at the time of Wallace's death. One, because as someone who also fights with his mental health and issues of addiction, like Wallace did, I felt like a kindred spirit had been lost. I'm a casual fan of his work, being totally honest, and being a writer myself. It's ironic. I'm not a huge fan of his writing. I think it's very powerful and it could be beautiful at times, but his obsession with structure and stuff like that just doesn't do it for me. I'd rather it be more about the characters and the situations than that the overall thing forms a pyramid or whatever he was obsessed with at that time. That stuff's very interesting in theory, but I think it's more valuable for students than actual working writers. That's just an opinion. So there's that, and it was this whole thing about she was married and he was involved with her, and it was an affair, and he was very much in love with her, and she dumped him, and poor guy was heartbroken, and it sent him off into a spiral of depression. And she herself, she's a recovered alcoholic. In fact, one of her books is about her alcoholism. It's one of the main focuses of that book, that memoir. So when Wallace died, one of the things she's written a lot about him before, during, and after his death. She wrote something about, that idiot, that was so stupid taking his life. Now, I myself, having buried a lover who took her life, I know how irrational and kind of mean and selfish you can be in those moments where you're just like, how could you do this? You suck. I'm so mad. I'll never forgive you, that kind of thing. So now looking back, I know that she was upset and probably taken out of context for all I know. But for a long time I was angry. I would say Mary Karr, she so ungrateful for all the wonderful times she had with David Foster Wallace because he took his life, and she doesn't want to empathize with his grief. But here's the twist in the tale. This new piece that I read is about people who knew him, Mary Karr and David Franzen, another modern writer, some others who knew him, who've come out to talk about what it was really like to be his friend and his lover at times. And he was a lot of work, and he was also a gaslighter, and he would blackmail people and insult them. And in Mary Karr's case, he, at one point, I believe, climbed through the window of her house. Her husband, threatened him with violence. I don't know if it ever came to blows, but he, tried to break into her car, things like that, crazy shit like that, would run after her down the street in her car, trying to open the door. That was one of the stories, too. She claims he was driving and kicked her out of the car, the moving car. And I met one guy in rehab who had been thrown out of a moving car, and he said it was the most painful thing he'd ever experienced. It was extremely painful because he rolled on the pavement. road rash and maybe broken bones. Who knows? That's horrific. It's terrible. So forget all the art. That's a dirtbag thing to do. That's not okay, Mr. Wallace. And in the case of Bobby Fischer, it's really amazing what you do with this, infinitely fascinating and confounding and complex game of that we call chess. But that doesn't make it okay for you to think that Jewish people have a secret cabal to control the world. The two don't go together, And myself with mental illness, I've had drunken rants where I've said horrible things. And there's a big debate in the community of addicts, mostly recovering ones, is the person you are when you say those things the same person you are when you come to, when you sober up, when you aren't using, and also in dual diagnosis when you're not using and you're medicated, when you're taking your actual meds. Like me, at the moment I take a couple of pills. I'm on a fairly low dose, but I take a couple of pills before bed for anxiety and mood stabilization. I've tried a lot of them. I've been on all kinds. Under supervision, I have a very good psychiatrist. But it's the eternal quest, the journey of medication. A friend of mine once called it years ago. It really is a journey. You got to be serious about it and stay on that path, which Wallace was. And he had gone off his meds at the end and took his life. I know, sadly, several people who've done the same thing. Bipolar people, in particular, go off their meds because they think they'll be fine. And before they get to that manic high, that's why they went off their meds, so they can experience that again and paint, 10-foot canvases naked in the middle of the night because they feel so good from all the surging chemicals in their brain, their bipolar mania state. When that's not going on, they're crashing. As high as the peak is, it's just inversely, dichotomously as low, the trough of the wave when it crashes down. It's deep and forceful and could, drown you, suck you under, suck people around you under. And in this case, Mary Karr got sucked under partway with Wallace's death. So the central point is this: why do we, as fellow artists and fans of artists, when there are artists who are geniuses, that's the word in particular, they're geniuses, but they're also kind of they're crappy people who do bad things, like objectively bad things, like hitting their girlfriend, whether or not she's with them in an affair and they don't feel like they're getting their fair share of attention from their lover because she's got to go back to her husband. That's another discussion about morals and ethics and timing and sensitivity. Forget all that. Your friend, Mary, pushed her out of a moving car, broke into her house. She was scared to death of him. Don't know if it had said anything about restraining orders, but I would not be surprised if that became involved at some point, or more than one, because I know they expire. You have to go back and get them redone. I had a friend years ago, I took her to court to get hers renewed against her ex-husband. They don't last forever, not all of them, the restraining orders. But yeah, apparently there was a big backlash. I'm not a part of that literary fiction community quite, I'm not quite the right age. I'm too young for that particular thing, and I'm not nearly published enough, obviously. Hopefully, someday, hopefully. But the publishing part, not the abusive, evil genius part. I want that. I don't even know if I'd want to be tagged a genius. There's a curse of expectation. Stephen King called that in one of his books. Talent is the curse of expectation. A character says that, of all places, in the novella for The Mist. Funny, huh? Great novella, by the way. Awesome movie. Everybody who's seen it knows that. And one of the best endings ever in a movie. The ending of that movie is just fucking nuts. But it's like, wow, they really went there. They really went there in a movie. Nice. But yeah, talent is the curse of expectation. And in Bobby Fischer's case, millions of people around the world. They're saying, he's fickle, he's strange. We watched him on Dick Cavett in 1972. He was odd. He seemed a little off, a little funny, a little strange, a little disconnected, or whatever term they'd want to use. In other words, my primary point is, why do we let people off the hook for being bad people at times because they are considered geniuses and they do exceptional things with their abilities. Why would it possibly be that I could slap 10 shades out of my girlfriend and go home afterward and she's crying and she's afraid to call the police, so I'm not brought up on charges. I put hands on her, but she's not calling the 5-0. I won't go away, not getting booked. So I go home and I feel detached and I open up Microsoft Word and I start working on a manuscript I'm writing. And I sell that book. 18 months later, it's on the New York Times bestseller list. Matt, this amazing book, who is this guy? He's got a YouTube channel. There's so much more than my YouTube channel. I've been writing forever, but I've got blogs and stuff out there. If you want to look deeply internet, you can find me. I've been around for a long time, putting stuff out there on the web for people to see. But let's just say, right, I strike gold with a book. Who is this guy? He's this fascinating, enigmatic, the word genius. And all the while, this poor girl who I've roughed up and done something to that is unforgivable. She's sitting on the pain of that. She wakes up crying because she had a nightmare about me breaking through her door and slapping her again, choking her, threatening her. She's terrorized. She has trauma. She's got PTSD because of me. And my fans, she comes out one day and tells some people, and it winds up in an issue in Harper's or The Atlantic. And my fans aren't having it. Matt's a sensitive genius. You know he has mental illness. You know he has a history of depression and suicidality. Don't judge him. Leave him alone. God knows. Maybe she's just trying to socially climb using his name. These horrible things people say nowadays. The victim blaming. It's terrible. It's just awful. I'm not okay with it at all. And so that's where this kind of fluxion, tension comes from for me, making this video right now that I'm about to wrap up here. Yeah, guys, in the comments, please, get in there. If someone wants to make a response video, that would be absolutely wicked. That'd be amazing. But, yeah, what is the deal? Why do we do that? Hang on a sec here. Sorry. Yeah. Why do we excuse genius? Because of madness.